Hello, all, and welcome back to Here is the Thing podcast, episode 3. Today, we are having a special guest, Dara. Let me introduce him briefly to you guys. Dara is a chemical engineer with a strong academic and professional focus on sustainable energy technologies, hydrogen production, and process decarbonization. He holds a Master of Science in Advanced Chemical Engineering from Imperial College London, where his dissertation explored the techno-economics of process heat, decarbonization, and electrification. Currently, he works as a junior project engineer at a leading hydrogen supplier and engineering solutions provider in the UK, following his previous role as a graduate analyst at the company. His experience also spans hydrogen production research, catalysis, and process design and optimization. What an inspiring CV and background that you have, Dara. Firstly, congrats. And I'm pretty sure most of the people out there wants to actually pursue the career path that you're following right now, since it's a very hot topic. I want to learn about how your feelings right now that you're working at a company. How's life in UK? Briefly, just if you could tell us your feelings.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me. It's a
Hi,
pleasure to
Dara.
be here and speaking to you, Aicha and Kuno. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, so I'm very happy with where I am currently. It's an interesting field to be in. It's particularly interesting because I feel it has a lot of potential and the future can be very exciting, right? So it could turn out to be a very fun sector of engineering because you have open problems. You have to find solutions for those. It's not all already solved. There are many things that you have to think about. You have to navigate not only the engineering aspects of hydrogen or regulatory aspects of it. It's also about coming up with a new business because the hydrogen market is currently very small. It has to grow. So yeah, I love where I am currently. And I joined as a graduate analyst. Initially, I was more involved in business aspect of hydrogen at first, commercial aspect of it. But then I decided to move on to the technical aspect of it because that was more aligned with my background. And as a graduate, when you join a company, you have the opportunity to rotate usually. So I felt it was the time to move on. And yeah, I recommend everyone to stay tuned with hydrogen and the future of it.
Now that you gave a brief introduction, I have loads of more questions to ask to you, especially about the regulatory part too, because that's also the part that I deal with a lot, and I think it's a very important part. And as far as I understood, now you're working also as a project manager. Is it correct? Or
I'm a project engineer. It involves managing projects as well, but it's also about developing projects and delivering them. But yeah, it is a bit more technical than management. It has a close contact with actual engineering of a project too.
Yeah, I understand. Maybe I have questions about like non-technical part of it because that's what I work for, non-technical project management. Because I want to ask you, how do you handle the responsibility part of the time management, especially being in a sector where, as you mentioned previously before this talk, that it was quite unpredictable. How do you manage your time effectively as well as manage the project itself while keeping your stress level at a mediocre level?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on how you look at your job. I guess it also depends what's the environment in which you work. If it's all very relaxed, if people just delegate work to you and then they give you some reasonable deadline that you could work with, then it's up to you to decide how to manage your time and how to schedule tasks. I think I've been quite lucky in that regard that what is usually asked of me is not too much. And I'm usually given the freedom that I require to properly schedule my time and to devise a plan to deliver what I'm asked of. So I think some of it is just about the situation you're in. I think another aspect is just the personal mindset that you have. Sometimes you just have to do work and not think about what could go wrong or, like other aspects of negative aspects of working. For example, you might want to procrastinate, but if you have a very dedicated and focused mindset, you just sit and do it and go through it. And even if it's difficult, you have to deliver something because it was asked of you and you took the responsibility. So I think some of it is just about the mindset of you taking responsibility for what you've accepted, and navigating that with your colleagues it could be difficult because sometimes they expect you to deliver something in time, But if you manage their expectations early on and say, okay, this is not possible in like 2 weeks, it requires 3 weeks, or this is just something that I cannot do, I need help, I need more resources for this, I need the help of someone else as well, then I think it'll become easier. I had the tendency to accept everything that was asked of me. Now that I've worked a bit more, I realize that it's not wrong to tell people you cannot do it by your own. You need someone else's help. You need more time. Not because I've gotten lazier. It's just that I feel like the quality of work and the deadline dictate a certain level of time and focus that one person might not be able to deliver. Or I mean, of course, you can scale this to a bigger project. I think it's very important to manage expectations early on.
Kunal, then what do you think of this answer that Dara gave? Do you agree?
Completely agree with what Dara said. The whole key to having a peaceful life at corporate or anywhere is be transparent with your work and honest with your work. So if you have both of the things and you give fair share of hard work to your work, everything is good, and be consistent, I guess. But yeah, I think with geographies and sectors, these things might vary a bit, but I think more or less the crux remains the same.
Yeah. If something is urgent, it's actually somebody's poor planning, so you don't have to actually think about it too much, and you can still manage your time effectively.
Right. I think it's a bit dangerous to apply that to hydrogen because, or at least any other, I would say, technical field that could be dangerous. I think the main thing about hydrogen is that things can definitely go wrong unpredictably. It's explosive gas. If there's, let's say, malfunction at some installation, then all of a sudden you have to do something very urgently. You have to go there, you have to fix it, you have to make sure nothing bad ever happens there, right? So I could not blame that on poor time management of someone else. So in that regard, I don't think that sentence applies here. But in like less hectic scenarios where you have a project that is not dependent on intermittencies such as malfunctions or something like that, I guess it could be about poor management of someone else. But again, going back to that mindset that I was speaking of, even if something is poorly managed and it's now delegated to you under a time limitation and you have to do something very urgently, I think it's important to take the responsibility if you know that you have limitation on time. If you take responsibility when you know there is an issue with time, then you should deliver it because you had the option of deciding if you want to take that responsibility or not. But if it's something that was delegated to you and you had no say in it, and then you see, okay, no, now that there's an issue, it's not possible to do it, then I think you have to communicate that early on. Yeah, it really depends on what you're talking about. But my experience has been that communicate early, and if something needs early attention and that you cannot do anything about it, and if you have accepted the responsibility for that thing, then you should do it, and you should not really give any alibi. Yeah.
Wow. You speak like since the beginning, you speak as if you're very chill and it's such a relaxed job. Now that I'm hearing more about this, I understand what kind of consequences it has.
Yeah.
Because as far as I understand, even if like in normal office works, even if you don't deliver on time or something gets wrong, people can point towards you because if you've done something wrong or if you poorly planned something. So I wonder in technical sectors that has high risk of safety, like in hydrogen technology, how do you deal with this, or are you at a more safer side in terms of what you do as work?
So initially, when I joined in that like first 6 months that I was an analyst, it was completely office-based job. It was a completely office-based role. I was never in a dangerous situation. But when I moved on to engineering aspect of it, I'm in exposure of many more dangerous scenarios, and it's something that I knew that will happen. I was okay with that, but there are rules, there are safety regulations that you have to comply with. You have to know about those regulations. And there's another I speak of is that not only you have to comply with it, you have to make sure everyone else who will be using your equipment and your technology later also knows about the safety of the safety procedures of that piece of technology, and they comply with it as well. Because in the event that something goes wrong, you'll be responsible because they learn from you. You were the responsible party of delivering a safe system. So at first, I think I was a bit more scared, but now that I know about the equipment and how well designed they are and how brilliant were the people who design these hydrogen infrastructure systems and these, pieces of technology. I'm less scared, I'm more relaxed. But yeah, currently my role is more exposed to technically like dangerous scenarios or, like disasters maybe. But yeah.
Only our valedictorian can do this job, guys. You're probably valedictorian, right? I don't know what's.
No, I don't think so because a valedictorian has to give a speech. I did not give a speech. And I think it's
Nobody
usually
gave a
used
speech.
for, yeah, but yeah, I think that's where the term comes from. The last part, dict, I think means to give a speech or something, to dictate. Yeah, but I'm not sure, maybe I'm wrong, but I think the valedictorian is usually used for high school, I think, like the graduation ceremonies of high schools. But yeah, anyways,
Then you must be
I
the
did
first.
not give a speech.
Okay, then you must ranking first in our class. I think
Maybe.
so. But yeah, I understand. Wow.
I think my question is more on the technical side. How do you deal with the storage of hydrogen? Because from what I have read till now, there are two options currently: storing the volatile gas, but we don't have in. I am aware of India that India does not have the tanks required to store hydrogen, and what they are currently doing is converting it to ammonia, transporting and then converting it back. That's what I know. So what's your, it might be that it might, you can't reveal that, but if you can share your insights on that aspect.
I think it's pretty public, the storage of hydrogen, and stored as a compressed gas. And the reason for that is, at least right now, you have very limited requirement of storage. Like there are not many systems that need huge amount of hydrogen storage for them to function properly. Most of the hydrogen usage right now in the world is for refineries when they want to use hydrogen in their processes, and also ammonia production, right? And these end users use hydrogen that is produced through steam methane reforming, and it's usually delivered on pipeline because it's another unit right next to their unit that does that, and there's a pipeline between the two. So, and all these operations are continuous, so you don't have to store anything. It just continuously flows from one unit to the other one. But nowadays, when we are talking about the hydrogen in our daily lives, for example, let's say buses that run on hydrogen, or forklifts that run on hydrogen, or cars maybe. So in these scenarios, you need to have some sort of storage, and it's usually in compressed form. I've never seen any commercialized liquefied storage of hydrogen. And the ammonia application that you mentioned is interesting. But what I've heard is that it's going to be usually used for a long distance transportation of hydrogen in the future, because the cost of conversion of hydrogen into ammonia and then cracking of that ammonia at the end point will only be justified if you are doing a huge amount of hydrogen transportation. So unless you are, let's say, transporting it on a ship from India to UK or vice versa or whatever, it will not be anything feasible. And even in that
Yeah.
scenario, it might also not be feasible because there are so many inefficiencies in both conversion and cracking.
Yes. Yeah, that's why I found the hydrogen technology a bit interesting because the storage was
Yeah.
still an issue. And what would you comment on the quality and availability of good quality electrolyzers in the market? Are there decent enough electrolyzers or still there's a scope?
So electrolyzers are one of those areas of research that a lot of attention is being dedicated to. As you know, that we have like alkaline electrolyzers, we have PEM electrolyzers, which are proton exchange membranes, and then we also have solid oxide electrolyzers. And the first two are the more commercialized ones, especially the alkaline, which is cheaper, but it has a lower efficiency. As far as I know, the leading country in electrolyzer production is China. But there are also companies in the UK and also in the US and Europe, all over the world, that are working on this, especially PEM or proton exchange membranes are really interesting because they have really fast response times. So as soon as you like apply the electricity voltage, they start producing hydrogen. And that could be really interesting if you want to use hydrogen as a grid stability unit. When there is excess electricity, you turn on your electrolyzer to produce hydrogen, and then you can store it and then use it when you need it later. So that's very interesting. But currently, as far as I know, electrolyzers still have to become cheaper. They're still too expensive. But as it has happened for solar panels and as it has happened for batteries, we might
Yeah.
see in the future a huge drop in the cost of electrolyzers as well. So if that happens, it will be a huge boost to the hydrogen economics. Unfortunately, I'm not the expert on electrolyzers, but I know this much.
No, I think it's a very good insight on electrolyzers, and yeah, I got the answer I was looking for.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for your question, Kunal. So I also wonder what type of hydrogen production do you work for then, if you're not familiar with electrolyzer?
No. We do electrolysis, but
Okay.
my expertise is not in electrolyzers because I'm more currently focused on downstream of production. Like, how
Mhm.
would you get that
Sure.
hydrogen
Hmm.
to your customers? That's a whole different thing. Electrolysis is obviously fundamental to all of this. Hydrogen, one of the misconceptions that there is about it is that it's an energy source. Well, hydrogen is not an energy source. Hydrogen is an energy vector. You still need some primary energy to produce hydrogen, and that's usually assumed to be renewable electricity. So you have to have excess renewable, cheap electricity, hopefully, to produce cheap hydrogen. But even at that point, you have to find a way to transport it. So it could be difficult because it's a gas, it's an explosive gas. It does not have a high density. So if you have to deliver a high amount of energy, then you have to compress it or liquefy it. As I said, liquefaction seems to be something for the future so far, but even the compression of it requires some energy, and then the safety aspect of transportation of compressed gases comes into picture. So all of that are the areas that I'm more involved in right now. Yeah.
That's so great. So, since you are also working as a business analyst, I'm assuming that your startup actually sells this technology to people, or what sort of place is the company working for, really? Like, is it actually selling the technology or the outputs like hydrogen produced?
So the company that I work at is a company in a larger holding, and the idea is to integrate the hydrogen supply chain from production to services that you'll eventually get at the end. And we are mainly focused on transportation sector, like buses. So one of the companies that is in the holding is a leading manufacturer of buses in the UK, and we are the distribution wing arm of the holding, and then there's a production arm. So yeah, it's all a huge holding, but the company that I work at is a startup. Like, we are just trying to win contracts. When I say a startup, it has been a startup for a while now, but it is still a small company. It's still not huge. It has a number of people in it, but it's not a huge company yet. But it's because hydrogen market itself is not a huge market yet. So yeah, sell hydrogen. So that's a main income stream, selling the hydrogen. But if you want to sell hydrogen, you still need energy infrastructure of like the pressure
Yeah.
infrastructure of that, the engineering infrastructure of that. So that's also what we provide.
Very nice. I've been seeing electric cars, electric vehicles everywhere in UK, but in Turkey it seems like it's very scarce amount of resources that we can reach. So I want to ask you this question, especially in countries like not part of, Europe. Do you think like how fast will it arrive, the hydrogen technology? And do you think, please also consider the economical consequences? So maybe that might also affect on the time that it will come to us. Because AI has come, but these renewable energy technologies and hydrogen, I'm not seeing much of it right now.
Yeah, so hydrogen cars are a bit tricky. I'm not sure. I mean, currently around the world, there are not many hydrogen cars commercialized. There are a few, but the number of them getting sold is not huge. There are more of them in Germany and, if I'm not mistaken, in the Netherlands and France, I think. Not many in the UK. And the reason for that is, again, it's about the cost of running your car on hydrogen, because as I said, that there are so many different conversions that have to happen from your initial source of energy to getting movement from the wheels of your car, right? So you have to take electricity, then you have to waste some of it to produce hydrogen. Then you have to transport that hydrogen in compressed form to some station, and then in that station you refuel your car or bus or whatever, and then that vehicle has to either use a fuel cell or a combustion engine that would move it, right? So again, you would lose some energy there. For cars particularly, it seems like electricity stored in batteries is a better way to go because we are seeing them right now at very competitive prices with like conventional fossil fuel driven cars. So I don't think we're going to see hydrogen in cars, in like regular normal passenger cars, but buses and heavy goods vehicles might use hydrogen. It's because of some other benefits that hydrogen could provide these vehicles. For example, when the battery of a let's say bus or a heavy goods vehicle goes below a certain threshold, then they start losing power, and that is a minor issue for that's a minor issue for your car, because long before you get that, you can go to a charging station and charge your car. But for a bus and or a heavy goods vehicle, there might be some unpredictability in what you're going to do. For example, what if you stay on the road too long? You cannot just cancel your service. You have to provide it, right? So hydrogen has that benefit that as long as you have hydrogen, you'll have voltage at the end of your fuel cell, and that'll work. So that's something to consider. And there's also the issue with charging stations for heavy goods vehicles and buses. The electricity infrastructure is quite slow. The grid connections have a queue up to a few years. It seems like whenever there is some demand for electricity, it's very difficult to get the supply for it. And the AI boom and the data center demand all around the world is adding to that issue. It's making it more complicated. Then add energy security issues rising from global conflicts all around the world to the mix as well. So now it seems like you have a energy problem which has so many different aspects and elements to it. It's that you need cheap energy, but you also need clean energy. You also need what you call it a secure energy, and you at the same time you want consistent energy in terms of like all the hours of the day.
The plate is full.
The plate is full. The reason I'm talking about this complexity is that to say hydrogen is not a holy grail to answer all of these issues. It is a solution to some of these issues in some cases, as is electricity, as is biofuels. So all of these solutions seem to be useful to solve a part of the picture, part of the problem, not all of it. So cars, as you said, I will not sign this on any paper, but my opinion right now is that probably cars will not play a huge role in the hydrogen market. Buses are more likely.
Dara
Heavy goods
Bahrami,
vehicles.
2026
Yeah, I will not sign this,
forecast.
and do not quote me on this. And if you quote me on this, I will deny it. Do not even paraphrase me.
I think this will be the highlight of the podcast.
Don't even paraphrase me. No,
No, I
please don't.
won't. Okay.
I think I really like the line that you said hydrogen is a vector, not a source. I think that's a lovely
Yeah,
line to start bring the highlight of the episode.
yeah.
However, I have a question on water security.
Mm.
Since water is the source for hydrogen, and all of us know that the water situation because of data centers and US has already started facing problems because of that. So what's your take on the water security and fresh water availability owing to the fact that different sectors of energy and AI and all those new kind of stuffs are increasing? So how would that change the life of a common man?
Yeah, I think the water is, to be honest with you, I don't think water is a main issue here because there are electrolyzer technologies that use brine or seawater to function. For example, earlier I talked about how most of the hydrogen, almost entirety of the hydrogen currently used is produced by steam methane reforming. But also there's also another category, and that's electrolysis of seawater that's already happening because of chlorine demand. So, like PVC around the world is a very, very important material that is used in construction. And the C in PVC stands for chlorine, right?
Yeah,
Polyvinyl chloride. So
chloride. Yeah,
yeah, so that chloride is coming from the salt in your seas, in the
exactly.
seawater. And it is produced by electrolyzing seawater, and it works. It's an old technology. So I don't think that we have a lot of issue with using limited resources because worst case scenario we can use seawater. But that being said, I feel like when you look at the cost of providing pure water, it is such a small percentage of the total cost of hydrogen production that it seems to me that's such a small problem. because even if you get unpure water, you can install purification systems to
You're such a businessman, Dara. Wasting water is not a problem. Like it's such a small problem.
it's no, because yeah, I mean,
We have
I get
oceans.
the
Like if you think
comments,
about it, he's right. How many part of the world is the oceans?
but
Okay. Yeah.
I mean that the reason I mentioned chlorine is to just to give you a picture that it's possible to do electrolysis with seawater as well. Worst case scenario, you have to do that, I suppose. But that's a very interesting question to link it with water shortages. But again, as I said earlier, hydrogen does not have to solve every issue that there is. I mean, like let's say batteries, they have also environmental issues. You know, lithium extraction is not a really clean process.
Yeah.
So they all of these electrical circuits, they require so many rare earth materials. All of the extraction methods are also not really clean. So I think whatever you do, as long as you're manipulating the nature, you'd be somehow polluting it as well. I think when you
Yeah.
compare that to hydrogen, it's I guess if you think about the fuel cells or the electrolyzers, the picture could change. But the production itself, I think it has very small environmental footprint. Just purify water, which, as I said, it could be non-drinkable water as well. You know, you can take non-drinkable water, which is wastewater, and then use it for hydrogen production. But you have to purify it, obviously.
Okay, I think that answered my question.
Yeah, that's very good take though. Thank you both for that.
Yeah.
The next question that I would actually want to ask. So Dara,
Yeah.
the thing is, I got accepted into a PhD role for a research position
Wow, congratulations.
for fuel cells, like working on fuel cells in the lab 9 to 5 every day, 5 day of the week. So it's very physical
Okay.
task, and also because of other reasons, I rejected it ultimately,
Ah,
unfortunately.
okay.
So
Sorry.
my question would be, would you actually recommend people to pursue research in this field, since as you're like projecting this as something that still has unpredictabilities in terms of positive and negative sides of whether it's actually a technology worthwhile? So do you think it's worthy for a person to pursue a PhD or like a master's in especially hydrogen technologies? What do you recommend? Or just dive into industry?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure if I can answer it very well because when you have to decide to study something for, let's say, 4 or 5 years, which is the length of a PhD course, it's a huge decision to make. And it seems like you have to take a bet, like you have to wager your time and effort on the technology, right? The way I think about hydrogen is that humanity has mastered different types of energy conversions. We know how to convert solar radiation into electricity. We know how to use that electricity to have mechanical energy, like movement. We know how to use chemical energy to have electricity and then use that electricity for everything else. And the list goes on. We can talk about all the different ways that we are converting energy to other forms. One of the energy conversions that we are still struggling is converting electricity to chemical energy. And that's when hydrogen enters the picture because it seems to be the most straightforward way to convert electricity to chemical energy. Now, the question is, why would we ever need to have chemical energy if you have electricity? If you have electricity, just use it. Just move electricity with a wire. It seems easy, right? Just move it to a place that you need it and then have fun with it. But the truth is, chemical energy has some very interesting properties. One of it is that it's easy to store compared to electricity, and it can be combusted to high temperatures very easily. And we already have a huge infrastructure that relies on chemical energy rather than electricity. So that's why hydrogen is an interesting concept to invest time and effort into, because you are trying to basically complete a picture. You're trying to complete the energy conversion picture. And that's why I think it's going to be a huge thing in the future, because as we progress through the course of the human history, it seems like we're gonna, in the future at least, take a lot of energy from renewable sources. I don't know if you're familiar with that very famous classification of civilizations. There's a very famous scientist that has classified civilizations based on the amount of energy that they consume. And the classification is an exponential classification. And it says the level 1 civilization is able to use all of the energy that its host planet has provided to it. And the level 2 is a civilization that is able to take and extract all the energy that its host star is providing to it. And then level 3 is the whole galaxy, and level 4 is like the whole cluster of galaxies, and it's an exponential scale. Now, apparently here on Earth currently the human civilization is evaluated as something around like 0.7 or something, if I'm not mistaken, meaning that we still have to progress towards taking all of the energy that we have available on our planet. And when you think about that, all of the energy that we have available, at least a huge proportion of that is going to be renewable energy that the sun's going to give us through sunlight radiation. Then there's also wind, there's also geothermal. And all of these will be in the form of electricity. Now, what are you going to do with electricity? Are you just going to wire it to different things? Or as I said, you have to convert it to chemical energy to use it somewhere else. So that's why I think since we're going towards a huge abundance of, or at least huge extraction of electricity from our environment, that the problem of converting electricity to chemical energy also becomes a significant one. And that's where hydrogen comes in. And that's why I think in 20 years from now, maybe 30 years from now, hydrogen is going to be a huge thing. That's what I think. Fuel cells, so far, it seems like they're still too expensive. They have to become cheaper. So when there's something is too expensive, it probably means that there's room to innovate, there's room to research, there's room to work on that technology. So yeah, I would be excited to do some research on fuel cells myself, but again, depends on everyone's personal life and vision for the future. Just looked up the classification. It's called Kardashev scale, which is a method of measuring a civilization's level of technological advancement. You can take a look later. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So my question was like, why do we need to transform electricity to chemical energy? Is it because of the storage conditions?
Some of it is because of storage, I think. It's also about the fact that, as I said, I think there are like 3 or 4 main reasons. The first one is storage. There's also the fact that providing heat in a form of electrification is very difficult. Not because we don't have the technology, we do have the technology, but we currently have a huge infrastructure that relies on chemical energy. Think of all the furnaces that there are in the industry, right? We cannot suddenly place electrical arc furnaces for all of them, and the grid does not have the capacity to do that. It will take so long for all the industry to convert itself into a electrical based heating system. And electricity is intermittent, so that's another issue, which again storage tries to solve that. And yeah, and by the way, there's another issue, which is energy security. If you have electricity that is renewable, then if you transform that electricity into some form that can be used later, then you stop relying on other geopolitical players. So basically what I'm trying to say is storage itself is not only because of intermittency of renewables, it's also because it's an insurance. If you have the ability to store energy in case something wrong happens, in case there's an issue with your supply chain, that's a good thing to have. And again, hydrogen seems to be the most straightforward way to do that. And then other chemical energy storage options that exist rely on hydrogen. For example, there are startup companies, there are ideas about how to produce, let's say, synthetic methane, right? Take the carbon from the atmosphere to like direct air capture of carbon dioxide. It requires a lot of energy, but let's say you do it. And then you still need hydrogen to produce, what you call it, synthetic methane through some processes. So hydrogen seems to be the main way to capture electricity into chemical energy. That's why I think it's going to be very important.
I think I agree with that point of yours because I come from an agriculture background. I work in agriculture. So based on the policies that I have heard and the issues that are due to the war and everything, urea has become a major hurdle nowadays because of the dependency on some particular countries. So governments are now coming up with policies where they get carbon dioxide either from air, or I think majorly from the industries, from their furnaces and all those other sources, and the hydrogen, and then convert it to ammonia, and then a reaction to make urea. So governments are also, I think, trying to relocate the energy into different forms to solve the very basic issues that the people might face.
Yeah, energy, as I said, like energy in itself is a huge problem because you have to deliver energy. You need energy. You have to procure it. But now, these are your limitations. You have to procure it. You have to have it
Yeah.
cheaply. It has to be nowadays clean or decarbonized. It has to be consistent and it has to be secure. So there's a difference between consistency and security. Consistency means that when you have it, you have it. It's not going to be interrupted on short time scales. Security is a more long-term view of energy. There's not a risk of someone cutting your energy supply. So that's what security means. Now try to solve it. Oh my God, how are you going to solve this issue? It's a huge issue. And another aspect of it is that no country is like another country. It's such a unique problem all around the world. So the conditions in which India is completely different from the conditions that the UK is in.
Yeah.
Or the Turkey is in. So that's why I think energy is a very exciting sector to work in, and it's going to have ups and downs. It's going to be very volatile.
I'm very inspired by this talk, actually. But
She might pursue the PhD.
I regret. I'm just kidding, but
Yeah.
Dara, so when you were speaking about all the complexity of hydrogen production and technology, like all of the complexity, all the metrics, think of it. Like you build something as an engineer, you work on it, you do an R&D behind to optimize all of the process, and then something political hits. And as you said, someone cutting your line completely. Can this happen just like how we are witnessing right now for gas and all? Do you feel like this can also happen for hydrogen technology, like process and pipelines?
Well, I think, yeah, currently the major sponsor of hydrogen research and hydrogen business are the governments around the world. So it's all very policy driven. It's all very related to how governments look at this stuff. Because if you do the accounting, if you start actually looking at the costs and revenue, it doesn't take long for you to realize that hydrogen on itself as it is right now just is not feasible. If you compare it with fossil fuels, if you compare it with electricity, in scenarios where you have the option of all three, hydrogen is always the most expensive one, unless there is some sort of support. And currently, it seems that governments are committed to, at least some governments, it always changes, are committed to support it and basically offer that sponsorship. So the major player that can cut your line is the government, is the state, as it is right now. Maybe in the future, when you have more abundant electricity, when you have cheaper electrolyzers and cheaper compressors and cheaper fuel cells, then it becomes a different story. But as of now, because no one can really cut your energy supply, right? I mean, as long as you're getting it from renewable sources, no one can cover the sun, right? I mean, the UK does not have a lot of sunshine, but it has a lot of wind, so no one can really stop the wind from blowing. As long as you have wind, technically you can have a turbine and then connect that to your electrolyzer and you'll have hydrogen. But as I said right now, it does not make economic sense, if there's no government support. So the major player that can cut your line is government. Maybe in the future it changes.
I think I have a question for all of us. Keeping in mind your love for hydrogen, if apart from hydrogen, was there any sector in renewable energy or energy as a whole you would like to work in? What would be that? I think all of us can answer this question.
Yeah. Well, I think the most exciting one is fusion. It's just sci-fi.
I agree.
It's so cool, right? But they always say fusion is 25 years away,
I would pursue anything that would have 0% harm, potentially, which would be, I think, wind energy, because wind is so, to me, it's very, innocent. It's just the wind turbines, it's just working and it provides you energy. Also, more solar panels. I think it's very easy to even have a startup. Like, I remember there has been a bunch of startups in Turkey about solar panels, people building around the city. So I think it's good for those countries that see a lot of sun. And yeah, I would pursue those ones, I think.
I have some bad news about wind, Aicha. Wind turbines kill so many birds.
Yeah.
Did you know about this?
I didn't know. You gotta sacrifice something, right? At some point.
I think in Europe or UK, they did an experiment by painting one of the blades, I think either red or yellow, and they saw a reduction in the birds that were killed. But I don't know how feasible that is. Okay, so for me, it would be battery recycling, because I believe that everyone is currently so much focused on making batteries. But if you look in totality, we are on the verge of getting too many batteries because it's around 10 to 15 years since the electric cars have started on the boom. So there would be too much waste, too much lithium that can be extracted, and that's what I would like to work on. And I think also maybe wind turbine, something around how to manage the waste of the turbines, because their life is also like 20, 25 years, and after that there is
Mm,
no way out because they are polymers. They cannot be decomposed. So maybe something around
mm,
that as well.
right. Interesting. Yeah. I didn't know they are polymer.
Yeah.
I always thought that they were made out of steel.
No, I think there are some kind of polymers. That's what I read. And I also
Mm,
found that
makes
there were
sense.
some sites where the turbines were kept like in open, and the
Mm,
bacteria was developed that started eating those turbines. So I think there is a way out that nature has already provided. That can be a very
that's
cool
cool.
thing to do.
Biology always fascinates me. Like it's
Yeah.
so weird. Sometimes like
Nobody
wow,
said biofood.
biofuels. I was thinking about biomass before I said fusion because
It stinks, so we don't want.
it's when you think about like the perfect green energy solution, I think biofuels are the closest that you ever get because they're just think about how many different technologies are present in nature and like that leads you having biofuels. Like there's carbon capture, plants capture the carbon in the atmosphere and then they take the carbon and then they make biomass out of it. And then they can ferment that biomass into something which is a fuel that you can use for combustion very easily. And you don't have to do much. It's all nature, it's all bacteria, it's all, organisms that are doing this. And all you have to do is, clean it later on, separate it, and use it. But the issue is there's always a catch, right? The catch for
Yeah.
biomass is limited. So if there's a way to have more biomass without jeopardizing the food supply, without jeopardizing other issues, I think it's a very good solution. By the way, like the result of this process, which is like CNG or bio LNG. So these are fields that you can already use in your infrastructure. So that's the closest you're to having a true alternative. But again, there's a sourcing issue. Where are you getting the biomass from?
From my perspective, I am not a very big fan of biomass. Let me tell you a small case study. In
Yeah, okay.
India, the government's made mandatory for 20% blending of ethanol in petroleum, in your fuel, in your car fuel,
Mm,
basically.
yeah.
And I think currently millions of metric tons of ethanol is being produced, and there are so many factories with the help of government that were set up, and their major sources were either sugarcane, rice, or maize.
Mm,
So now, since it's been 2 to 3 months since they have started blending the ethanol in our fuel, and there have been so many breakdowns in between the road. My car also, I think 1.5 months back, stopped in between the road. I called the company, I got my car towed, and I said, what was the issue? They said the fuel pump was damaged, and there were two reasons behind it. It changed the density of the fuel, which the fuel pump was made for, and also since ethanol has a very low flash point as compared to petroleum or diesel,
mm,
the engine gets heated very early. And especially in summers, Delhi gets to temperatures around 45 degree as well. So I think in India, people are not very happy with this implementation. But I think this is a very particular application that I am talking about, and there might be other cases that there where it might be a win. But for vehicles, it's not working at all. Not at all, I
yeah.
think.
Yeah, I was never a fan of ethanol blending. Yeah,
Yeah,
and also the same thing happening in USA. They do have a lot of ethanol blending there
yeah,
too. And it has made a huge issue because there are now hundreds of thousands of hectares of maize
yeah,
production, and they've become a huge
yeah,
lobbying force in the United States because all the people are saying, okay, this is not good because you're jeopardizing the food supply
yeah,
chain. But these people are saying, oh no, all these communities now rely on this income, and you cannot just stop it. But I think CNG and
yeah,
bio-CNG and bio-LNG that are the products of fermentation of biomass in anaerobic digestion facilities are really good, interesting use cases of biomass, provided that biomass is not from already existing food
yeah.
source, food land, Because I assume when you say maize and when you say, what was it, sugarcane, these are lands
Sugarcane
that
and rice. Yeah,
rice. Wow. These
rice
are
as well.
these are lands that previously people were using for food production, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I think it's a
that
tricky
doesn't
take on
sound good.
food versus fodder.
Yeah.
So, Kunal, do you think you can solve this problem?
I don't know honestly, because the situation, as Dara said, about the lobby in the ethanol production is so big right now that billions of dollars have been invested all over the world around this. And yes, the employment aspect is also a part. But if you talk about the implementation side, the Indian government also said that they are purchasing ethanol expensive than the petroleum. So economically, it's also not making much of a sense that they aimed to reduce the price of the fuel. So, but I
Yeah.
think we are at the very early stage of this. We are at a very stagnant phase and it's yet to explode. And there are other options to be explored as well. This is just the beginning for the biofuel segment, I believe. And I think, yeah, bio CNG, bio LPG can be a good option.
So, when we think about the artificial intelligence, I think it
Mm.
had like a curve. It had a climax where everyone could use it openly. It was an open source, and then it went into more private. And as long as you pay for it, it's like a service. I know it's like very two different things comparing hydrogen against AI, but do you think there is a curve? And do you think we have reached that curve to the climax points of using hydrogen? Or how many years should we wait until we have that maximum? And also, do you think it will be more accessible, as you said, that hydrogen is mostly actually dependent on the how government puts the regulations and the rules? So do you
Mhm.
think in the future government might be more open to make it public? Like, I mean, more accessible in most of the vehicles and everything we use?
I think there is some intention of that. Like, as I said, especially recently with the issues with energy security around the world, energy is becoming a major area of investment, and hydrogen can, in theory, answer some of those concerns. So I think as we are moving towards a more fragmented world where countries tend to be less reliant on each other, less trusting each other, energy security becomes a huge issue. So yeah, in that regard, I think that there's an argument to be made about positive, like good prospects for hydrogen. But at the same time, as I said, hydrogen requires a lot of abundant and excess electricity. And electricity right now seems to be very limited because you have a huge demand for it through AI boom, data centers boom. And if you are going to consume all that electricity on your chatbot to generate a nice email, then you probably will not have a lot of energy left, unfortunately. So that's what I
So
think.
that's
But
not a theory. That's actually true that it consumes too much energy.
I think the huge electricity demand that's going to come with AI and data centers and all that will make the case for all these electrification technologies a bit more difficult. But that doesn't mean they're not going to continue to happen, but it's going to take a bit longer, I think. There's always the prospect of some technological advancement happening in fuel cell technology or in electrolyzer technology that makes it all cheaper and more feasible. Hopefully that happens. That would be very good. But my vision has always been that it's going to take some time, and that's a good thing because it means it's going to be mature when it happens. Currently, let's say even right now, if you had all the ingredients for the hydrogen economy, the sector, the technical aspect of it is not mature yet. So like it's not mature yet to provide all that infrastructure, all that demand. So it will definitely take time. It's a very small market still. It's going to grow, but the hype, the initial hype that there was for hydrogen has passed. It was around the 2020s until COVID hit, and then the Russia-Ukraine war that heavily influenced the energy markets. And now, as we are progressing through the second half of 2020, we are seeing more complications. But if we continue that path, then energy security becomes the major issue. And again, hydrogen will have an argument. But if we have cheap electricity, then again, there's an argument for hydrogen. So I think both ways, there is some argument for hydrogen.
Yeah, there's some argument on both paths. That's an incredible take. Kunal, do you have any other questions to ask? Maybe any philosophical one that you kept?
Okay, I think I can repeat the last one that I used in the last episode since we did not get answer on that one. So I read this statement on my flight at Heathrow. It's the tunnel that walks you to the plane. So HSBC has a quote written over there that an attempt to differentiate is an attempt to belong. What's your take on that?
An attempt to differentiate. It's an attempt to belong.
Come on, big
Wow.
brain.
Wow. An attempt to differentiate is an attempt to see how a quantity will change in respect to another quantity. That's differentiating. In mathematics, do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah. dx upon dt.
So that's my definition of differentiate. No, I don't know. Was there any context to that sentence? Was there a picture or was it?
If I were to explain this statement a bit, it's like
Yeah.
the more you try to differentiate, in totality, you belong to a different group who individually want to differentiate. But you lead up to a group
Ah,
that had the mentality of differentiation, but now are in a common society, something like that.
right. I think I'm against that. I think differentiating leads to not belonging. Like even if you differentiate and find a group that you belong to, you've still put aside so many other people. So I don't know. I feel like I've always been in favor of being all together, very chill, like enjoying everyone's company, not to differentiate. Yeah, but yeah, the differentiation can lead to good things and bad things. I guess it's such
Quote
a such an
unquote.
open question. I don't know. This was a weird question.
All right. I think
All
that
right.
was an incredible, very satisfactory session. Thank you so much, Dara. I really enjoyed it. Thank you,
Yeah,
Kunal, for
likewise.
Me
heating
too.
up
I really enjoyed it
questions
as
and
well.
engaging.
And thank you, Aicha, for hosting the podcast in a very smooth manner. And Dara, you talk like a philosopher, man.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for the invite. I hope I didn't speak too much. I hope it was all good. Thank you.
What do you mean you're supposed to speak? And you did perfectly well.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed
yeah.
it. It
I
was a
think I
pleasure.
come after this podcast. I come up as a more knowledgeable man about hydrogen. So satisfied, very
For
satisfied.
sure, for sure. I know
Thank you.
much
Yeah,
like it was such a like full of knowledge topics. Like
yeah,
it was obvious that like below the answers, it wasn't blank. It was filled with knowledge. And thank you so
yeah.
much. Thanks guys for watching and see you in the next episode.
See you. Bye bye.